I like when you look at me like that. Hi, everybody. I'm just having a moment with my wife before we start talking to you. This is Brian and Leslie Fathery with the Unbreakable podcast. We're glad you're here with us. We're in the month of October. We're talking about,
Yes.
started talking about being the light of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm trying to remember what we talked about last week. How many seconds? I'll just tell you. I got it up here. We talked about the
Appetites and
entertainment and
entertainment.
appetite and what's your appetite.
Mm-hmm.
Good lessons.
Yep.
This week we're going to talk about something that we're going to warn you ahead of time. We're not trying to be what's the word I'm looking for?
Antagonistic.
Well, that's a good word, antagonistic or confrontational per
Mm-hmm.
se,
Mm-hmm.
and we're certainly not being judgmental.
No.
But the whole goal behind the Unbreakable podcast,
Mm-hmm.
the Unbreakable Ministries, family and marriage ministry,
Mm-hmm.
is to help you remain strong in your faith, in your marriage, and in your family. It's to help
Right.
you raise children to that won't leave their faith when they
Right.
hit 18, 20, 30 years old.
Right.
The statistics show that that's a problem. We're losing between 18 and 25 almost 70%, maybe just a hair more than that, of the kids that are growing up in the church. I'm not talking about non-church kids. I'm talking about churched kids. They're walking out the front door between 18 and 25, and they've done that for decades, for
Yeah.
50, 60 years.
Yeah.
But they used to come back
Mm-hmm.
when they hit their 35, 40, got married, started having kids, like, oh, I need to give my kids the same faith my parents gave me,
Mm-hmm.
yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. That's not happening.
No.
That's not happening.
No.
More than 50% of the young people that leave the church never return. Not only do they not return to church, but they do not return to their faith.
Right.
Which, we understand. We believe church is super important, but we understand you can have faith outside of the church. Even though God mandates you go to church, it's a whole other topic for another day. But that's not even happening. There's a huge growing category what they do in polls and census taking, and it's called the nuns, not the ladies in the habits, but the people with NONE, none. That's a growing group who have no affiliation of any faith whatsoever.
Right.
Don't consider themselves atheists, do not consider themselves agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
They just consider themselves nothing when
Right.
it comes to religion and faith.
Right.
And so we want to address things that will help you,
Right.
help your children stay in faith
Mm-hmm.
and remain in faith. And so we want to talk about some things like that. So today, the topics today are hitting that, and they may hit close to home, and you may get mad at us. But I'm saying don't kill the messenger for the message. The message is true because we base the message not on our opinion, but on biblical truth.
Right. So we believe that Christians should look different
Yes.
than the world.
Absolutely.
We should not look like all the other people around us in what we do and how we behave
Right.
and all that, because there should be something different inside of us. The light of Jesus Christ is in us, and it should be shining out from us. Yep. And that should be looking different than what the regular Joe on the street looks like.
Yeah.
We shouldn't do things the same or look the same
Right.
as the world. And also, then we want to make sure that we are honoring the Lord. He says in His word to be holy like He is holy.
Yes.
So we're supposed to imitate Him. As another in Ephesians, it says imitate the Lord. We're supposed to imitate God. We're supposed to be holy like He's holy and perfect like He's perfect. And yes, it's possible. It's possible through Jesus.
And if it wasn't, He would have told us to do it.
Right. Through the blood of Jesus, through receiving Him as your Savior, through the Holy Spirit who's working inside of you and quickening you to be just like Jesus. So it's possible to do that. And it's up to us to pattern our life and make it look like God.
Yeah. Yeah. We believe that your Christian marriage and your Christian family should not reflect the culture. It should be counter-cultural.
Right.
And here's the reality. Most Christian families and most Christian marriages look just like the cultural marriage and the cultural family. There's no distinguishing between the two. And I
It's
was,
sad. We talk about often
yeah,
that the divorce rate in the church is the same as in the world.
some
So,
places higher.
and so we're not doing all that we should be doing
Right,
to keep that together.
right. And so we want to talk to you today about two words: tolerate and celebrate. Now, I have been saying since I was still single, since over 30 plus years ago, when I was youth pastoring, I always said to the young people I was ministering to, so whatever you tolerate
Mm-hmm.
will end up being something you celebrate.
Yes.
So you have to be careful what you tolerate so it doesn't leak into the celebration of what you
Mm-hmm.
do and who you are.
Right.
So let me just explain that for a minute, and Leslie will come in and correct me, and I'll be the bad guy. She'll be the good girl, and that's just the way it works in our family. She's sweet. I'm sour. Not really. I'm a little bit more blunt, and she'll temper it a little bit. But I want to talk to you about some things that Christian families should not tolerate.
Yes.
Period. At all. Christian marriages should not tolerate at all. So let's start with, I'm like, drum roll. I'm trying to decide if I want to go family or marriage. Let's go marriage first. In your marriage, you should not tolerate the silent treatment.
Uh-oh.
You should not tolerate using sex as a weapon to get what you want or to make a point or fight over something you're fighting
Mm-hmm.
over.
Mm-hmm.
You should not tolerate
Manipulation.
The Bible calls it witchcraft.
And that can be from either spouse.
Either spouse.
Yeah.
I'm not picking on male or female.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying in general.
Mm-hmm.
You should not tolerate calling each other names and cussing each other out, or the whole, you're just like your dad. You're just like your mom. Shouldn't tolerate that.
Mm-mm.
Don't put up with that. I'll go back to really early in our marriage because we don't put up with things with each other.
No.
We love each other.
Yeah.
But we don't tolerate things that aren't right.
Mm-hmm.
Give you an example. She may hit me in the middle of it, but it's okay. We were having an argument really early in our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Really early in our marriage, like the first year, maybe two. And I said or did something that I probably shouldn't have said or did. Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember the exact root of the conversation. And she got mad at me and walked out of the room and walked out of the house. I did not tolerate that. I walked after her and she just walked away from me and go, hey. And she turned and goes, what? I'm like, would you let me do that to you? Would you let me walk out on you like that? And she looked at me. She composed herself. And she's like, no, I wouldn't. I said, then why should I let you do that? You're right. I said, we need to come back. We need to have the discussion. If you want to call it an argument, that's cool. We need to have this conflict, and we need to come to a mature resolution together, because we're not on the opposite team. We're on the same team, right?
The only time it's acceptable to walk away would be if you tell the other one, I need a moment to get myself together.
And that's okay.
You walk away, you compose yourself, but you come back to the conversation.
Right.
You can't just
walk away.
Run out on somebody. Yeah.
No.
Just walk out on them.
It's like being a 3-year-old at that point. And you're not. You're married, right?
Yes.
And so you can't do that. So we don't, as a married couple, you don't tolerate that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't tolerate the silent treatment. I'll give Leslie a lot of credit. She's never done that to me. She may be mad at me or mad about a circumstance or a situation, and I can tell when she's tense or upset. And you can ask her, because I do this often, does her focus look and her focus attitude is the same as her mad attitude. Mm-hmm. It's exactly the same.
Yeah. So
I'll look at her and go, okay, are you mad or are you focused? Which are you? And she'll tell me, well, I'm mad. I said, something I said or did, or just life in general. And most of the time it's not me. Yay, me. But there are times when it's me. She's like, well, yeah, but I got to work this through and then we can talk. I'm like, okay, well, let me know when you're ready to have the conversation. Because at that point, I have no idea what I did or didn't do. She does, but she doesn't do the silent treatment. She may have to work out not just retaliating or just lashing out or saying something out of anger.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And has to get her attitude together.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can have a calm conversation,
Yes.
which turns into tears on her part 95% of the time.
Yep.
It's just the way that works.
Yep.
And guys, when they cry, we typically lose. Just so you know. Not really. I'm just having fun.
Wow.
I'm just having
Okay.
fun. So we don't use silent treatment. We don't use sex as a weapon. She doesn't hold back from me, and I don't hold back from her, just because we're in a disagreement or an argument, or something's not going right, or if life's just not going right. Because intimacy with each other is really a vital part of your marriage. It's a vital part of your relationship. You can go back because intimacy and not knowing how to handle intimacy is actually the root of the problem of the world. What? Yeah. Go back to Adam and Eve. They had intimacy with God. They said they walked every day in the cool of the evening in the garden with God. They hung out with God. How cool is that? And they would just visit with him and chat and talk like we're talking with you. They had this conversation until they got stupid and ate the fruit of the tree of good and evil.
Which was outside of God's guidelines.
Because he told them don't do it. And they did it anyway. And when God came, he already knew because he's God and he knows, right? He's like, where are you? And they're hiding, right? They made themselves coverings and they were hiding. And then Adam's like, that woman you gave me, right? You know, we never will take personal responsibility. Whole nother subject, whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But they walked away from it. I firmly believe that if they had not held back their own intimacy from God, if they had come to him with repentant hearts, if they had come to him with open arms and open minds and open spirits, that he would have restored them. But because they hid themselves, it says, from the presence of God, that's when they were kicked out of the garden, because of them hiding themselves from God's presence. We do that in marriage. We hide ourselves from intimacy with our spouse because we're A, mad at them, B, mad at life, C, didn't have a good day, D, don't feel good. Whatever the reason or excuse.
Trying to manipulate them.
There's that one. I don't even know that one because she's never done that to me.
You don't do that.
No. But people do. People do.
And let me just throw in there, manipulation is like the sin of witchcraft.
Absolutely.
It's something very serious to God. God doesn't want us to be manipulators.
Right.
He wants us to get along with one another, to work together in unity. He does not want us to manipulate each other.
Yeah. So those are just some of the things that we're telling you don't tolerate as a married couple.
Right.
You should celebrate your intimacy. You should celebrate your friendship. You should celebrate even your disagreements and your likes and your dislikes.
Right.
Your differences is what brought you together, because 99% of the people who get married the opposite of who they are.
Right.
Because that's what they like. Because my wife is super serious and I'm not. and now that's flipped over the years. And,
a little bit.
and she's been less serious and I've been more serious. But you celebrate your differences. You celebrate your likenesses. You celebrate your intimacy. You celebrate your friendship. You celebrate your relationship together.
Right.
You celebrate your family with each other, about your children. So these are just some of the things that we're telling you to celebrate. But other things,
in other words, if I can recap what he said. In other words, we're saying celebrate the way God says to do it.
Right.
Celebrate healthy relationships together. Celebrate the way that you have intimacy together. Celebrate the way that God says this is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
That's what we want to celebrate.
Yeah. And don't tolerate, don't put up with, and don't celebrate things that God says are bad.
Or things that are just half-hearted or not quite all the way there. You know, you have the choice to make it better.
Yeah.
And celebrate it better.
Yeah, because I see on Facebook all the time, on social platforms all the time, a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, and they're like, celebrating 17 years of being together, been together 12 and married 5. Happy 12th anniversary. No, your 5th anniversary.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just, until you actually are married, it's not a marriage anniversary. It's a cohabitation anniversary, and we celebrate that in our culture, and we shouldn't. I know that sounds harsh.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to be harsh. And again, not being judgmental. We can't live your life for you. If we wouldn't dare try to do that. And we're just people that understand what God said. This is the standard.
Yeah.
And I stole this years and years and years ago from a young preacher. Don't even remember his name. And he said this. He said a standard is not something to live up to.
Mm-hmm.
A standard is something not to fall below.
Right.
And so that's our theme at our home.
Yeah.
We set very high standards, and the floor is the bottom. It's not coming up to it, it's the bottom. And if we go below it, then we're disappointed, and we'll repent, we'll get our act together, mm-hmm. and we'll get back above the floor,
right.
and stay in the standard.
Right.
So let's talk about family. We kind of beat you up as a married couple. Not really. So celebrate.
It's not our point. Not what we want to do.
Not
to beat you up, but just to give you something to think about.
Let's talk about what do people in the culture. I'm talking between a Christian family and a cultural family. That's my definition. And so a cultural family celebrates or puts up certain things that a Christian family should not. But we do. That's the whole point of this podcast, is saying that we should look different. We should act different. And we should have different standards
mm-hmm.
than the cultural family.
Yeah.
Not because we're better than, not because we are smarter than, but because we have a God-given standard that we're staying above, and we're not falling below. And so one of the things that in the cultural family that they tolerate is disrespect and dishonor
mm-hmm.
and disobedience.
Right.
If you don't believe me, just go stand around a Walmart for about 30 minutes and watch it.
Yeah.
You'll watch it. Because those who do not tolerate those three things stand out.
Yes, they do.
And they're not always a Christian family. There are people who have just really good morals
mm-hmm.
and really good discipline and really good standards.
Mm-hmm.
And you can watch them. I remember, oh gosh, this has been a long time ago. We were going through the Walmart. We're doing the Walmartian thing. And we're going through and we're buying our groceries and our stuff, mm-hmm. right? It's not just groceries, you're getting everything. And so we were in the grocery side of things, and there was a guy, probably in his late 20s, early 30s. And he had about a 5-6-year-old, I think it was. And this little kid was just pitching a fit.
Mm-hmm.
And the dad looked at him, and he was walking with his dad, and his dad looked at him and said, "If you don't stop pitching a fit, I'm putting you back in the cart." And the kid's like, whatever. And he did that. We're like, oh, that wouldn't have gone well in our house. But we didn't say anything, and we're like crisscrossing in the aisles.
Right.
But we could hear him about 3 aisles over. And
he was loud.
And then at one point, the dad put him in the cart, and you could hear him. You thought his dad broke his leg in 6 places. And he's just throwing a conniption fit. That's a southern term for throwing a temper tantrum.
Yes.
He was throwing a conniption fit, and he was doing that at everyone in the store. And this, you think about pressure, the pressure to cave to this kid who's throwing a temper tantrum.
Because everybody's listening. Because everybody's watching.
Because how embarrassing do you
mm-hmm.
feel? Yeah. How parenting do you feel? You feel like you're not parenting well mm-hmm. in that moment because your kid's being a turkey. But it's not your fault. It's the kid.
Yeah.
But he just held his ground. And next thing you know, we come around the corner, and he's got this kid in his arm, and he's pushing the cart, and he's getting his stuff, and this kid is like
all
over the place in his arm, like it's like he's holding a fish out of water.
Yeah.
And so he just quietly, and the kid shut up because the dad, I think, threatened to spank him in the store, and the kid realized dad means what he says. But even though he was fussing and fishing, he didn't really say much anymore.
He was just holding him.
And so we saw this play out in front of us for over about a 10-15 minute period
mm-hmm.
of time. So we get done, we end up in the line behind this dad and this son.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he was a single dad or his wife wasn't with him. He was grocery shopping with the child. I don't know the background. But I remember the guy was just, you could tell he was like frustrated. You could tell he like, this child,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so finally I said, "Excuse me, Guy looked at me and goes, yeah. I said, we watched you throughout the storm, and we want to commend you. We want to tell you, you did a great job. You disciplined your child without killing him. You know, you did such a good job
Stuck
with
to your
your child.
guns.
You stuck to your guns.
Didn't give in.
You didn't tolerate disobedience. You didn't tolerate
Throwing a fit.
You didn't tolerate any of that. You stood for a standard. And in our culture today, we don't do that. Even as we're recording this right now, there are people standing in the Capitol building throwing a fit over what's going on in the Middle East because they're like a bunch of 3-year-olds on either side.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say too that that we don't tolerate. We as Christians don't tolerate that behavior, even though sometimes our children want to behave that way.
Right.
I mean,
they're human.
We're all human, yeah. And even sometimes we, as the parents, are human, and we've had a bad day, or we've done something. You know, sometimes we just don't behave the way we're supposed to.
Right.
But the standard, we're just trying to keep you on the standard and above, not below it. And so. One of the things that Brian and I do not do, we do not swear at our children.
Not one bit.
We don't swear anyway, but we don't swear at our children because they've aggravated us or because we're mad at what they're doing.
And we don't call them names.
Yeah, and so just it's a standard that we're not going to drop below.
Right.
Very tempted at times, sometimes, because we had some difficulties here and there, but we don't swear at our children. That's just one of our standards, and that's something that we in the world around us, when we go out in public, we see a lot of that happening. And so it's not something we want to tolerate, and we, in fact, encourage others not to tolerate.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing, we're going to wrap us up in the next 5-10 minutes here. One of the standards that we set, and this is just as an example, you can do however you're going to do, but we set a standard in our house because we don't tolerate or put up with disobedience. So the standard at our house, and it's really funny because our kids are all grown up now and they still repeat this mantra, even though they're not little ones anymore. They're 20 plus, every one of them. And so, but the mantra or the standard in our house was obey the first time with a smile. It was with the smile thing that really threw it into it. Yeah. You know, that was the wrench, because can you imagine a toddler? You know, a 3 to 5-year-old, 3 to 6-year-old, 7 to pre-adolescent, you know, when the hormones are starting to kick in, and they're disobeying you. And they did. And our kids did. They disobeyed. And then I'd be like, come here. And they're like, you can see the, oh man, looking across their eyes. Mm-hmm. And they come over and said, now, first off, you can't talk to your mom that way. Because they may have back talked to their mom. Or secondly, what were you asked to do? Blah, blah, blah. Well, then do it. Okay. And then they like roll their eyes, throw out the hip, and they turn and they go to stomp off. And they go stomping off to go do it, but not with the right attitude.
Yeah. The with a smile is with a good attitude.
Right. So they may get 3 or 4 feet from me, and I'm like, wait, come back. We're starting over. Oh my gosh, my kids hated that. They'd rather I spank them and beat them than take this moment to teach them to discipline themselves and walk in self-control, even when they're mad. And I tell them, it's okay if you're mad. It's okay if you don't agree. But we're in charge, and we're your parents, and you're going to do what we told you to do, and you're going to do it with a good attitude.
Right.
And we're going to keep going back to the beginning until the good attitude kicks in.
Yes.
And sometimes that was once or twice. Sometimes that was 6, 7, 8 times.
Some of them took longer to fix their attitude than others.
And it's a choice. It's a choice. But I knew that someday they're going to be married and have to deal with attitude. Yeah. One day they're going to be an employee or a business owner.
They're going to be a
parent.
parent.
They're going to be a parent. And they're going to have to deal with people and learn how to choose a good attitude, even when everyone else around them.
Right.
You know, I mean, think about this. Just on an employee level. Your employee comes and tells you, go do ABC. Mm-hmm. And you're looking at your employer like, instead employer. Mm-hmm. And you look at them like, are you nuts? I'm not doing that. Well, your income may change that day. If you don't.
If you don't, yeah.
And so you have to go do it. Now you can go do it and do a horrible job of it and do a halfway job of doing it.
Yeah.
But you won't get promotion. You won't get raises. You won't. But if you turn and look at them and say, okay, I'll do it. I think, and I did. We didn't just tell the kids to do this and not do it ourselves. I worked for a guy, and no names. My family will know this story. But I worked for this guy, and we had this shop that we had, and he had a lot of inventory. I'm not going to say what it was because people will know what it is. And we had this inventory, and he came in one day and said, I want you to rearrange the shop, the display in the shop in here. I'm like, okay, what do you want? And he told me what he wanted. And so and he's the owner. I ran the place, but he's the owner. So I went to work rearranging and setting it the way he said to set it.
Right.
This particular employer of mine was a jerk. He was known to be a jerk. And he loved just to pull people's chains because he enjoyed that.
Because he could.
And so I'm about halfway, 3/4 done. He walked in and goes, this is not at all what I told you to do. I told you to do ABC. And I looked at him, and I had a choice to make in that moment. Hit him.
Not a good choice.
Take him out. Yell at him, cuss at him. I could have done any of that. A lot of people would have. But I looked at him, and I carried a little notebook in my shirt pocket that I had. I had no pocket in the shirt, but I had carried a little notebook and a pen, and because he would always give me things, I'd write down what I needed so I wouldn't forget the things throughout the day. So I pulled it out, and I made a show. This is my little bit of rebellion. I made a show of flipping it over. So, well, that's not what you told me, but let me write down exactly what you want. You own the place. I will do this as many times as you tell me, but don't come in halfway through and tell me I didn't do what you told me to do. But I'll do it over again. And so he made up a whole new way to do it. And it was fine. He owns the place. So I wrote it down and I did it. Was I happy about it? Not even in the slightest. But did I rebel against it? Not even in the slightest.
I think we mentioned earlier this month about doing things with excellence.
Yes.
And so that's another standard that our family looks different because we activate our life on excellence because we want to do things as if we were doing it for the Lord. And so I would give my absolute best to the Lord in anything he asked me to do.
Right.
And he asks us to interact with people, with our children, with our spouses, with the people around us in the world with excellence.
Yeah.
And with a good attitude that blesses, that is not antagonistic towards others. He's asking us to do it as if we are doing it for him.
Right.
And so if we can keep that in mind, then it helps us to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And we try to teach our children that also.
Absolutely. We did teach them that. That's what I want to wrap up with, because the results of doing this, you'll like. You're going to appreciate the results. I'm going to give you 3 examples. My oldest one went to Bible school. She's in Bible school. She worked at what they call their cafe. And the guy asked her to go out and clean the tables.
Right.
And clean it.
And then come back.
And then come back and do something else.
Mop the floor in the kitchen or something.
She went out, she moved all the chairs, she cleaned top, bottom, side, under, she cleaned under the table, on the table, around the table, she cleaned because her mom taught her how to clean. And she swept up, and the guy ended up standing over the random place, stood over the side, watching her like, I've never had anyone do that. You know, they do as much as they feel like they have to get by. And she went the extra effort.
Yeah.
And did what we call and then some. And she did the and then some.
Yeah.
And he was amazed. And because of that, she got promoted quickly above people that had been there for a while. I've got a son. Everywhere he works, he gets promoted because he does everything with excellence. Yeah. He listens. He's compliant. But if it's a problem, he'll bring it up. But he'll just do the work. And he does it with all his effort and the best he can do.
Yeah, with all his heart.
I've got a daughter. She's my youngest. She's now in the workforce for the first time in her life. And just recently, she was doing some stuff, and the boss left, and she's 20 years old. 20, just turned 20.
Right.
And he has her telling people that are much older than her what to do. Because she's the most responsible person he has. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so she's just a super responsible person. And then he came to her and he said, I understand you do this. And she's like, yeah, I can do that. He's like, okay, well, we're going to change your hours a little bit. We're going to pay you more to do that. And so to get the rewards that come from teaching your children to be disciplined, to be self-controlled, to be all the things that the Bible says that they're supposed to be, when you do that and you don't put up with disobedience, disrespect,
Right.
and you don't put up with all that, and you teach them from young all the way through, the results you will be thrilled with.
Right.
And you'll be so honored to go, I taught them that. I did that.
Yep.
My wife and I, we taught them that. We did that. And now they're showing up, shining off,
Mm-hmm.
and they're looking different than the cultural kids.
Right.
Cultural people in that workplace. Mm-hmm. They just look different. They act different. They are different. Yep. Because that's the whole point of this podcast. We should look different.
Yes.
It goes back to the first podcast of the month. You should be the light of the world. And one of the ways that you're the light of the world is by what you tolerate and what you celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
No, you did it good.
Hey, we did good. All right, shameless plug. Go to theunbreakablefamily.com and get my wife's book.
Yay.
The Family Manual. A practical guide to raising the Christian family.
Yes.
It's got all sorts of great tidbits in there. It's got revelation in there. It's got some of our story in there. Mm-hmm. You'll be glad that you grabbed the book.
Yes.
So go do that. With that said, we're praying for you. We're believing for God to keep your family strong and for you to have an unbreakable marriage and an unbreakable family. We love you, and we will talk to you on the next The Unbreakable podcast.
Yes.
So then, we'll see you soon.